Hello, everyone. Do you hear us? Yes.
Is somebody chasing you, Ella?
Great. Yeah, the window is open. Noisy Istanbul.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Everybody's hearing us. So, we thank Bill for being with us today. He will give you some information about Startup Turkey in general, and he will give you some tips about your pitches and presentations. Today, selected startups will be with us to join, who will be pitching in Startup Turkey, and also the other ones that we select for Start Any. So you can introduce yourself, Bill, if it's okay for you too. And we
Thank
thank
you.
you again for being with us today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Elf and Brock and Ashley. It's great to be with all of you coming to Startup Turkey. I have to tell you, I'm in Austin, Texas, for a conference, and it's beautiful weather. It's nice outside. It's still early in the morning here, but it's a nice day here. So it's really great to be with you today. And for those that haven't been to Istanbul before, let alone Startup Turkey, you're in for a real treat. This is going to be a fantastic opportunity. The team at Etihome is really wonderful, and the event is really orchestrated to give you both the sort of maximum feedback, but also the maximum exposure that you can get. And I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And that the challenge of an event like this, like any event, is really it's a bit like a gym membership. If you know the team at To Whom has put the equipment in the gym. They have a nice building. It's lots of great facilities. But if you don't show up to the gym and use the equipment, you're not going to get in any better shape. So really, my job here today is to help you kind of learn or get some exposure to some of the things we've seen work really well for ventures and startups as they're coming through Startup Turkey. So please share your questions and any comments, and certainly I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks' time in Istanbul. So let's just pop into the agenda here, and hopefully you're seeing the slides on the screen. So we're going to do a couple things. We're just going to do a quick overview of the activities at Startup Turkey. We'll talk about the mentoring opportunities that are both going to be uh, uh, before the event virtually, and then it's going to be up to you to grab other mentoring opportunities during the event. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Um, the We'll talk about how to get the most out of the experience, the pitch criteria, how the judges will be viewing your pitches, and then we'll have sort of 7 fun rules of effective pitching, and certainly we'll get to your questions. So feel free to pop in questions as we're going here. Um, so just to get through this a little bit, so we've got Sunday of Startup Turkey, which is April 15th. This is really an amazing day. It seems like it's kind of a casual thing, and it can be, but really you can take great advantage of it. So this Bosphorus boat tour, for those again that haven't been to Istanbul and haven't been on the Bosphorus, it's magical, and so enjoy that. We'll arrive down at the boat pier around 9:30 in the morning, and then we'll be on the boat roughly until about 1 in the afternoon. And the mentors will be there, investors, a variety of folks from the startup community. So you'll want to take advantage of that time. Make sure that whether you're wearing your company T-shirt or you have a name badge on or something that makes it easy for others to identify you. And on the other hand, make sure that if you can preset connections that you want to have with certain people, that's always advisable. If you don't have the opportunity to do that, make sure that you split up your team and take advantage of connecting with folks. The real leverage here is is getting as many good contacts for your venture as you possibly can. So the thing you want to avoid is your whole team sort of walking around together, and you'll get a lot more contacts by splitting up. So I apologize. I wanted to be sort of give the detail, but I put the details of Monday's schedule up, and of course it looks fairly small on the screen. But the morning time is all of the startups pitching. It's 2.5-minute pitches. It's great. It's really a great time. It's really important that you're prepared for that, because you want to be able to watch the other pitches, and if you're sort of not ready, then you won't be able to enjoy as much of this as possible. There will be a long break in the morning. Again, good networking time, and then certainly a good long lunch break. Again, good networking time. So the more you can preset any meetings with people, the more you'll get out of it. One other note on the boat tour. So you'll see the boat tour ends at 1. The last couple of years that I've been involved in Startup Turkey, and we've done the boat tour, it's really pretty remarkable. If you make good contacts on the boat, or can even prearrange it, maybe going out and grabbing lunch with some of the key people you want to get to know better after the boat tour. So the day doesn't have to end when the schedule ends. You can continue it and continue to get more out of it. And again, just like the gym membership, you have to show up and use the equipment. So all the people are assembled. It's really just a matter of getting as much out of it as possible. There'll be some later in the day on Monday. There'll be some talks, a couple of important keynotes, and then we'll get into the finalists pitching. And so if there are 40 startups, they're going to be and the final 7 are pitching. There are going to be 33 that are sitting on the sidelines. That's so if you think about it, it's only about a 20% chance that you're going to be up on stage. Either way, you can get a lot out of this. If you're pitching, that's great, good exposure, good feedback. If you're not pitching, take good notes, learn from the experience, watch all the pitches, ask mentors, what are these ventures doing or what are the possibilities they see in these ventures that they don't see in yours. Ultimately, this is a learning process, and it's really up to you to exercise that. Let's see, others. Oh yeah, and certainly there'll be awards and after connecting. And again, just make sure you take as much advantage of that time as you can, and meet as many people as possible. So let's getting the most out of the experience. So there are a couple of keys here. And it's hard today with sort of all the interruptions we have, from email to texting and so on. But be as present as possible. Make sure that you're in the moment as much as you can. Turn the technology off. Maybe you can get to that early in the morning or later in the evening. Being prepared means coming there with your pitch ready, coming there with your game plan ready, making sure your team is ready so that you guys can split up, and you don't have sort of the mother hen and the little chicks following the kind of primary person. So as much as possible, split up and sort of divide and conquer. Being proactive means pre-setting as many meetings as you can. And again, it's not really a volume game. It's quality. So make sure you connect with the people that are going to be most meaningful for you and your venture. And we often get asked, how do I dress for this? And how do I act? All of this, how we act, how we dress, how we perform, should be based on how we want to be perceived. So if you want to be perceived as serious and a thoughtful person, then act and dress and perform as a serious and thoughtful person. If you are trying to drive some other perception, that's fine too, but they should be congruent. You shouldn't have an expectation that people are going to perceive you one way and act and dress and perform in another way. So just make sure it matches so that you get, again, that you deliver the message that you intend. And about 60% of what people perceive of us is what they see and experience, not what we say. So those types of things, how we act and dress and so on, become important in our communication. So yeah, ultimately, as I said earlier, this getting the most out of this experience is really, it's up to you. And I don't mean that to sort of push it off on you, but you know, it's like anything that we join, we need to be an active part of doing this and creating success. So mentoring opportunities. So yeah, let's talk about these. And this is kind of a really important part, and a place where we've seen a big separation between the ventures, the startups that get a lot out of Startup Turkey, and those that don't. And you know, we want you to leave very, very successful. And so, and if there are any questions on this, make sure you ask. So there are going to be a couple of opportunities for mentorship. Certainly, pre-event, there's going to be virtual mentoring, and you'll begin seeing information on that probably early next week, you know, within the next week. But ultimately, the goal will be to set you up with one mentorship session before Startup Turkey, where you can practice your pitch, get feedback, and again, ultimately, you want to make sure that you take advantage of that. If you can connect with others beforehand and get additional feedback, you definitely should, and we'd certainly highly recommend it. And then there is the informal opportunity. So Startup Turkey goes from the 15th to the 16th of April. You know, the more you can set up opportunities to talk to investors, talk to mentors, talk to sort of other ecosystem actors that would be beneficial for you, please do. And this is self-service, so it's hard for us to know who is specifically going to be right for you. We're happy to coach you on that, but you know, make sure that you take advantage of, you know, pre-setting as many meetings as possible. Use, you know, when you see who's going to be coming from a mentor or speaker or investor standpoint, use LinkedIn, you know, connect with them, preset meetings. You may have other mechanisms to connect with folks. Take advantage of those. And again, you can just say, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you. Maybe we could have a 5 or 10 minute conversation on the boat. Maybe we could have lunch after the boat ride. Maybe we could meet up on Monday the 16th. You know, it's really up to you. One other thing to mention, on Monday the 16th, there will be you'll all have a 1 by 1 meter square booth area. And it's important to take advantage of that. What I would suggest is, you know, if you're coming with multiple team members, having one person in that spot when there's activity there in the sort of the booth area, and then having any other team members sort of out and about, connecting with people, or maybe even in you know, one-on-one meetings with mentors or investors and so on. But there isn't really the space in those booths to accommodate a lot of people, and so you're going to allow more traffic to flow if you only have sort of one person there who's ready to. So now let's talk about mentee best practices. So mentees are the people who are getting feedback from the mentor. So that's you and me often. And so best practices. So there's a real challenge. We've seen a lot of this, and we're all probably guilty of doing this. And that is when somebody gives you a suggestion or they make an observation. It's very normal to want to explain why they don't see, you know, sort of what you see, or sort of to argue or justify your point of view. And so there are a couple of challenges here. Is when you begin doing that, you shut down the other person's comments. So quite often, there are really kind of two things. So when somebody offers you a comment, most often that is not their full comment. They're sort of testing you a little bit. They're giving you some indication of their viewpoint, but not their whole viewpoint. So when you rebut it or argue it or justify your point of view, you totally shut down not only their comment, but the likelihood that they're going to give you other comments, because they didn't come there to argue. They came there, you sort of asked them for feedback, and then you're challenging their feedback. You don't have to take their feedback. A much better way to handle feedback is to ask additional questions, sort of uncover more of their point of view. So if they say, gosh, have you tried X? Maybe a smarter response would be to say, wow, that's an interesting point. Nobody's mentioned that. Can you tell me more about what you mean? And why do you think that is important? What result or what effect do you think that would have? But really, your job is to uncover their full point of view, and you are likely not going to continue to get much feedback, and so it will really challenge you. So very much seek to understand their perspective, get as much information as you can. The other key thing, and again, we're always communicating. So if you have teammates with you, and if you don't, you need to do this yourself, but you need to take notes, and it needs to be visible that you're taking notes. In other words, have a pad of paper. This sounds very old school. A pad of paper and a pen or a pencil. Do not put your phone down and say, I'm going to record this. Number one, nobody likes to be recorded. And two is it's super duper lazy. If you're taking notes, the person who's speaking to you gets indication of what things you're finding important, because that's when you're taking notes. If you're not taking notes, they're thinking, gosh, they're not finding this valuable or informative. Why should I bother? So taking notes is good because you're going to remember things better when you write them down, as opposed to being lazy and recording them, or even worse, not doing anything. But also, it's a real visual cue of your interest in what someone is saying. So we're going to be, if somebody is going to invest in you, you have to invest in them. And you have to give them feedback that sort of tells them that you give a shit, and you have to give a shit. It's really important. So excuse the vulgarity, but it's really important that you care. And so mentors and investors knowing that you care is key. I've seen ventures totally berated in pitch sessions by investors when they're not taking notes. You do not want that to happen to you. I mean, it is embarrassing. It's bad, and it's rude and disrespectful not to be taking notes. So, and I would tell you that my experience in Startup Istanbul and Startup Turkey, before we started making these comments, was that 90 to 95% of people would come in with 2 or 3 teammates, and they just sit there and watch the feedback happen, but nobody was taking notes. And so we're saying this to really help you to perform well. So again, paper, pen or pencil, take notes, be attentive. And it shouldn't just be one person. If you have multiple teammates, have everybody take notes. They'll all hear and respond to different things, and it shows that they're engaged. So hopefully that helps. So let's move on to the evaluation criteria. So there are, as you can see here, 6 core evaluation criteria. And traction is proof of your concept. So ideally you have revenue. Revenue is really the only proof that matters. And so short of revenue, what other traction do you have? What other key endorsements? Then sort of getting down into more of the detail, what problem are you solving, and is it worth solving? Is there a proven base, a large proven base of customers for that? The market and market opportunity is key. The solution, is your solution the best way to solve the problem? Your team, are they the key people to solve this? What is it about them that makes you and them the ones to solve this issue and take this product or service to market? And then finally, the ultimate question for an investor is, would you invest in this and with their own money? So certainly make sure you take a look at these and ask any questions. But ultimately, your pitch should align with these criteria. So let's talk about how do we do an effective pitch. And so there, anyone you talk to that sort of talks about pitching will give you the format. And I know with the slides that Elf shared, there are sort of the format for the 10 slides, and you should follow that. What I'm going to share isn't really, it'll be a little bit about the content, but it's much more about the process of pitching and how do you how do you really get the most out of it and be as effective as possible? So the first thing, in order to sort of figure out how, let's figure out why. So first thing, the goal of your pitch is to create a conversation. So the pitch itself will not get you an investment. At the end of it, 10 people are not going to stand up and say, here's a check, go bring it to market, good luck. So no, what it's really intended to do is to create a conversation. So don't put the kind of pressure on yourself that makes you think that this is going to close the deal. It's not. What you want to do is close for a next step, which is a conversation. So keep that in mind, and your pitch should be intriguing for the receiver and cause them to say, gosh, I need to talk more to those folks. That sounds really cool. So hopping into the 7 steps here, the 7 keys, and you're going to, hopefully you find a little bit of humor in these. That's sort of the intent, but hopefully there's also some good nuggets here. So the first key is what I call the dance. And so when you think about, and this is something maybe be reflective for just a minute, think about when your pitch starts. So when do you think your pitch starts? And when I ask this in front of a room full of people, most will tell me, like 50% or more will say, my pitch starts when, I start talking, when I take the microphone. And it actually starts long before then. It likely will start on the boat, or it may even start in your pre-event mentoring, virtual mentoring session. But it's really the first time that the audience begins to experience you. And they may not experience anything that you say. They may see you for a day in, sort of various stages. They may see your team members. But this is really what your pitch is really what people are experiencing from you. And again, you're going to have 2.5 minutes to state your case. But ideally, the audience, at least some of the audience, already has much experience with you, and they're going to be listening harder, listening better. They're going to learn more because they have heard, sort of more of your story. And they'll be listening better when you're actually pitching. So make sure when you get in these moments, whether it's on the boat or in other informal settings, that you're presenting yourself well, that you're again splitting up as a team, your team going out and meeting various people, everybody understanding your value proposition so that they can all speak articulately about what you do and what you're hoping to get out of this event and those types of things. But take advantage of those informal moments. And the better you do the dance, number one, it's going to be much easier to do your pitch because you're going to be much more comfortable with the audience. You're going to be much more fluent in what you do and what you say. But also the audience is going to be much more interested in you because they bought into more of your story. They're leaning forward. They want to hear more. So the next key is what I refer to anyway as the dead seagull. So this is in pitches. This is where a lot of people really fail. We talk about sort of sharing the customer problem, and what we end up with usually is something on the surface as opposed to really how the absence of your solution affects your customer. So think of a world where your solution doesn't exist. How does the customer's life, how is the customer's life? What is it that's missing from their life? And that's really the problem you want to describe. But it's, often, if you're imagining an oil spill out in the ocean, people will, you'll see these provocative pictures of dead seagulls or seals or something on the news. You want to have that kind of imagery as much as you can when you talk about the problem that you're solving. And again, the problem is what exists in the absence of your product or service for your customer. What pain do they have? People are dying, babies are dying, something that really is very clear and again, shares the impact of the absence of your solution on your customers. So we also see quite often in these pitches where the team isn't well talked about. And so, if we've got a real clear sense of the problem, and there's a good solution, knowing who the team is and why this team in particular are the ones to bring this to market, whether it's, you've got some strong technology or technical skills, you've got people or someone who's done this before, they've had successful exits. There are key sort of indicators that you've got a very strong team. And sometimes you don't have that, and that's okay. But when you do have those items, those key elements, make sure you put them in there. So you've got people with some amazing marketing or sales experience. Again, big exits or good exits, solid exits in the past. The right technology folks. Any of those things are key. But think about why you're the key people, the knights in the shining armor, to bring this product or service to market. Now let's talk about the ask. So the ask is what you will ask for at the end of the pitch, and you should never end your pitch without an ask. And it doesn't need to be for money. It might be for referrals to customers. It might be to pilot customers. It might be to you really need a mentor in a certain area, maybe in finance or in business development. But it's up to you to make an ask. The audience is waiting for it, and if you don't ask them, it will be an opportunity lost. So make sure that you've got something that you're going to ask the audience to do, and don't say follow us on Twitter. That's not monetizable. Let's do something that is that will actually change the trajectory of your business. You want to, this should be, a multiplier, a force multiplier for helping you grow. So, all right, so let's get to the next key here. And this one is real important. So there's a real tendency, and I saw in Elf's slides with her recommendations, to keep the language simple. I don't think this could be said any clearer than talking about baby food, right? So, when you think about baby food, it has a couple of attributes. It's nutrient dense, and it's easy to digest. So imagine simple food that is so simple a baby can immediately metabolize it and use it for energy. And so imagine that for your audience, where they don't have to do any work to put what you're telling them to use. You want your delivery, your communication, the words you use, and how you speak to be that easy. You don't want them to have to work at all to be able to effectively use what you're telling them to be good, to do better. And so, when you start looking at the language you're using, when you start looking at the slides or imagery, or even how you enunciate, look at how do I give them chunks of information really clearly, so that after they've heard 40 pitches, they remember mine, right? Because it's not just them hearing your 2.5-minute pitch, it's them hearing 40 pitches and you standing out. So how are you going to do that? It's not going to be by speaking fast. It's not going to be by fitting in the most amount of words or the most content. It's going to be by hitting them between the eyes with really valuable content. So again, keep it simple and make sure that you get your key points across. Don't worry about the detail. This is not where you're going to get into detail. Again, the goal is simply to create a conversation. And so if you do that with the right people, then you're more than successful. All right, number 7, yes, your appendix. I'm talking about a different appendix. The appendix in this case. So there's a tendency, as we build slides, maybe one of the things I've seen work really well, because there's a tendency to want to, Startup Turkey suggests 10 slides or no more than 10 slides. You'll want to have 20. I promise you, you'll go, oh, there's no way I can say this all in 10 slides. I need 15, I need 20, I need 25. The way to build your slides, maybe the easiest way, is build every slide you can possibly think of, that whatever you think will tell your story the best. And then pull everything that doesn't speak to the specific questions that are being asked, the specific criteria, out and put it in an appendix, not this appendix, but behind your last slide. So that will get you down to 10 slides. Focus on the questions that are being asked. Don't worry about everything else. Don't worry about the detail. But the cool thing is when you have those appendix slides and you're in a mentor session or you're talking with an investor and they say, hey, tell me about X, tell me about Y. You know, I saw that you got a little bit into it in your presentation, but you know, I need a little bit more detail. That's great. We actually have that in our appendix, and you pull up that slide and you speak to exactly what the question is. It makes you look very smart, very prepared, and again, you're now a little more confident when you're speaking that, you know, I can, if I'm asked a question, I can respond to anything. And again, whether it's in your actual presentation or it's in your appendix, it's key to use. So, okay, so one last thought about pitching. And so probably many on the webinar have made pancakes before. So there's something that most of us that make pancakes have found, and that is that the first pancake is always the worst. And I know there are outliers in the crowd that will say, my first pancake's great, but you know, probably 80 to 90% of us, our first pancakes really suck. And so in order, you know, the thing to maybe think about is you know, as somebody who loves pancakes, the thing to think about is I know that in order for me to cook good pancakes, I have to cook at least one, if not more, bad pancakes. So there's at least a throwaway, one or two throwaways in every batch. And so if you think about that as a metaphor for pitching, you know, any of us can get anxious about speaking in public. You know, it's daunting. We're speaking in front of people we don't know well on a topic that we're really still developing, that we're learning more about every day from our customers, from our team, and so on. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's easy to get nervous. And maybe one way that will help you sort of navigate this and be calm or calmer is to think about, you know, this is just a part of the process. Every time I pitch, it's going to get better. And so, you know, think about, you know, in order to pitch well, I have to pitch poorly. And I'm not saying, you know, the goal here isn't to pitch poorly, but it's just a part of the process. However you pitch in, you know, today, tomorrow, on April 15th on the boat, on April 16th in front of the crowd, is how you pitch. It's done, right? That sort of batter is already mixed and it's already on the griddle. Just enjoy it. Every time you do it, it will get better. And so it's just a part of the process. Enjoy the process. And guess what happens when you do that? You're going to be much more calm. You're going to be much more relieved, and you're going to enjoy it. And in fact, you're going to perform a lot better. So just don't worry about it. It's just part of the process. You're going to mess stuff up. I mess stuff up. Keep going and enjoy it. Sometimes the slides don't work. The power goes out. The internet doesn't work. Your video doesn't work. You know, simplify as much as you can. But again, be ready for it all and be calm and enjoy it. Just get your story out. Okay, so I know we have questions, and I've seen a bunch come up. So Alf, do you want to help me go back to where the questions are here, and happy to address any? Scrolling up the list, so let's see.
I already answered some of the questions,
Okay.
by the way.
Yep.
If you have any more questions, please write down right now, and let me check all the questions.
I'm trying to see if there are any that you didn't address. They look like you got to a lot of them. So what did we miss? What other questions does everybody have?
And there are 3 people typing right now.
What's the weather in Istanbul today? We should let everybody know.
It's very nice today, actually, around 20 degrees, I think.
Oof, nice.
Or 18, maybe.
Yep.
How investors will shortlist from 7 selected startups. I mean, from 40 to 7 or 20 startups still on prototype stage. It's over 30 in Cairo. About Sarat's question, let me answer that.
Yeah.
Are there any prospective customers, partner attendees apart from the investors? Yes, there will be also investors, accelerators, and big companies. So they will be your potential customers too. Which infrastructure? Yes, 7 startup who will be nominated for the finalists. They will repeat the same pitch.
And they can adjust it, but it's generally the same pitch.
Yes,
They can
yes.
they can
But
tweak it if
I mean,
they're
I need to get
coming.
all the pitches at noon.
Yeah. Yeah. So there won't be much time.
Yes, 2.5 minutes, all the pitches.
Let's see. Once
Let me,
the final 7 pitches are done, I think 3 will be selected as the winner and get
maybe you
funds.
can, yeah.
How to talk for so how to talk further to the so there isn't a guarantee of funds, right? It's funds are really up to the investors and your conversations with them, right? And the individual startups conversations.
And Bill, you can help maybe Ali's question. It seems to me that early stage startup would have difficult by definition, no traction. Can you answer that? About startups who has no traction, what can they do in
Well,
Startup Turkey?
well, I mean, I guess no traction. Does that mean that? I mean, I'm assuming that means you have no revenue. But are there other? Is there other evidence of traction? In other words, do you have endorsements? Do you have pilot customers? What have you done that's validated your product or service, your idea, your concept? And so all of that is traction. Of course, the most reliable is revenue because when people part with revenue, it's the best evidence that they want what you have. Other than that, sometimes you can get false positives, and we tend to gravitate, many of us, to vanity metrics that don't really measure the potential. So our egos sometimes take over. So Startup Turkey is the right place if you've got some traction. Again, not necessarily just revenue, but something that is evidence that your product or service has achieved some level of product market fit. So ask more if that doesn't make sense, but yeah, I think that should help. Let's see. Are the investors already known? I mean, can we learn in advance? So, Alf, is there going to be a list in advance of what investors or attendees are coming so
Yes,
that people can make
yes,
contact?
that we will share it actually just before the event because we still get registrations and confirmations from the investors and VCs. So we cannot share, there is no way to share it right now. You can always check the previous investors on the website, but I will share the list of the investors and people you should network with before the event.
Mm-hmm.
And also we share the executive summaries of selected startups with the investors before the event too.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you fill up your executive summaries on Startini.
Fantastic. So another question, what to do if the VCs dominate the conversation and I lost my track? So, well, I guess nobody should dominate a conversation with you. It's really up to you. I mean, you're in control. Ultimately, if you have the right the right investment, then you're in control of making decisions. No one can force you into decisions that aren't in your best interest. So you have to take responsibility for the conversation. If you want sort of help in those conversations, let us know. But ultimately, you know, you should be in control and make sure that you don't either give away something you don't intend to, or allow conditions that aren't favorable or at least valuable for you. Um, who are the keynote speakers? I don't think they're all finally determined yet, are they, Aleph?
We haven't announced them yet,
Yeah.
but we actually Startup Turkey is not a conference, it's a demo day. So we will have just a couple of keynote speakers on the final day on the 16th of April. But the main players of the event is the startups actually. They will pitch to investors.
Excellent. And but you will release who the speakers are
Yeah, sure.
days or a week before something?
Yeah,
That's
in a couple of weeks.
great. And let's see, is the product owner or product management, are they important for startup traction and to get investors? Yeah, the team ultimately is really important. Depending on what investor you talk to, they'll tell you that anywhere from sort of 30 to 70% of their decision to invest is based on the team. So who's on your team is definitely important. Now, your team could be growing and building, and that's to be expected, but ultimately your team is important to investors because it's really about the team not only having the background that is conducive to being successful in this particular industry, but it's also the team and the leadership having the wisdom to listen. Investors want people that are not just listening to them, but are listening to customers and people that have the wisdom to listen and change and evolve. And so, again, we can think of all sorts of people that are very smart and technically smart, but aren't coachable and don't evolve. So it's really having both of those skills. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, the team is critical. So let's see. I'm just looking down at some of the rest of these questions too. So it says with early endorsements and users and a huge problem and market, would that work? Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's again, those are signs of some traction. So the more sort of evidence of product market fit you have, the better. So yeah, but those would definitely work. Will there will there be any mentorship program on how to track financial matters, company valuation, process of startup? That certainly would be up to you to identify mentors that could help you with that. And yeah, the mentors' backgrounds and skills will certainly be available. So you'll want to target people that can help you with financial matters, valuations, and so on. And there'll definitely be people there that have good skills in that area. Let's see. Is it possible for a startup to get an investment even if the startup is not in the three winners? Absolutely. In fact, winning is not, it's only evidence that for the people, for the judges on the panel, that those are, sort of good or target businesses. But if you interviewed 10 investors or 20 or 100 investors, they're all going to have different viewpoints on what businesses, what industries they like. So yeah, winning or being in the top three is only a measure of success for investment for those investors that are actually on the panel. And it doesn't go far beyond that. If we don't have income at this stage of our project, then we don't have a chance to raise funds. It's certainly not impossible, but you're probably looking more for seed or angel type investing or friends and family than you are for venture, unless you're a real outlier. So again, I would really suggest. So if you look statistically at who gets investment, 1% of startups, actually less than 1% of startups get either angel or venture funding. So if your whole plan is about how do I get investment, then it's you have a limited chance of success. I think focus on how do I get customers. Investment follows customers usually. So have a plan to survive and build your business through customer acquisition, and investors follow that. There are some outliers that get investment before customers, but the majority get customers first. So again, the only place where investors are ahead of revenue is in the dictionary. Other than that, revenue always supersedes investment. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just looking at the list here to try to figure out where I left off. So will you share the pitching requirements such as max number of slides? Yeah, that's actually all in. So the pitch requirements, max slides, max time to pitch, all of that is in the slides that Elif shared. So if you didn't receive those, reach out to Elif and she will make sure you have the slides that walk through exactly how to, what your slide should look like and how long the pitches are. Did you have startup and investors in travel vertical attend in your previous year? Yeah, that's actually, I've met several founders of travel related apps and services that have been at both Startup Istanbul and Turkey. So yeah, there's definitely some experience there. Thank you. How much weight would the VC give to part-time co-founders versus full-time? That is important, right? So, you know, their commitment will probably correspond to your commitment. In fact, your commitment should lead their commitment. The more committed you are, the more likely they are to be committed. So if you're partially or marginally committed, chances are they're not going to be very committed. So it's certainly important. If you go to mute, oh, probably decrease. Oh, somebody says, "Oh, if you go to mute, it'll decrease the echo. We won't listen to the sirens." No, I think we're good. Oh yeah, so people are having an echo problem. We're hearing more of that. I don't know if it's possible for you to go to mute temporarily, but people are hearing echo. Let's see, Artie Rose, if you have any early stage startups, which one would you choose for a startup investment, stage A or angel round? So let me make sure I understand this. If you have an early stage startup, which would you choose for startup investment, stage A or angel? Usually people start with friends and family and then go to angel and then stage A. So that's normally the progress, but you may find another path. You know, I think a lot of the, you know, it's hard to answer specific questions generally, right, without much information. So certainly understanding more of where you are, where, you know, kind of what your traction's been, what your history's been, is probably a better answer for that. But the normal progress is to go from your own money and friends and family to angel and then stage A. But you know, again, you know, there are people that jump steps, and that's fine too if it's appropriate. Did you mean I should have it now? I don't know what that refers to. Oh, okay, that's Brock responded to that. How many average of equity that previous startup winners gave to investors? Oh, so what's the average equity that a startup winner gave to investors? Actually, Brock or Elf may be better to respond to that than myself. So when they come back on, they can respond to that. And then another one says, do you want to go ahead?
I can reply if you want.
Yeah. Please.
Well, you don't have to give any equity to the investors on the jury. It's up to you. It's up your agreement. If the investors are interested in your startup, you will have a conversation about, but it's not about the being a winning startup or not. All the startups joining Startup Turkey and who will pitch to the investors, they should know actually before coming here that how many equity they are willing to give to the investors for how much money. So it's all up to you. I mean, we don't have any condition on that.
Fantastic.
I hope it's clear.
Sounded clear to me, and it's very situational. So I think for any advice on that. You certainly want to be really specific about your venture and kind of where you are and if you've given equity so far and all that. And if you've already raised some money and at what valuation. Let's see, I do see another question here. I didn't get how to manage, not explain part. How is it possible to explain, not convince the investor? So when I was talking about not explaining or not arguing, I was really talking about when a mentor is giving you feedback. I wasn't talking about investors, and I would say you probably don't want to argue with an investor either. And often investors will be a mentor first, and then as they have interest, they may say, "Hey, how do I invest?" But my point really is in this is when somebody is giving you feedback, it's better that you understand their perspective. So you're only going to have maybe a few minutes for a mentor conversation. You can spend it arguing or sharing your point of view, in which case you'll leave having gained nothing, or you can invest in them and really ask questions that help you better understand their point of view so that you actually already have your knowledge and information. You can add their perspective and either use it or not. When you leave the conversation, it's up to you whether or not you're going to use that information. So you keep it with you, but you can only use their information if you fully understand it. And I promise you, when people give you feedback, the first comments or comments they make are not the sum total of their viewpoint. It is just an indication or a hint of what they might be thinking. And if you don't ask them questions, you'll never understand their perspective. And if you question this, just think about, and the next time you're giving somebody else feedback, think about what you do. You make an initial comment that's a hint of your viewpoint. And if they argue, or if they then tell you why you're wrong, or whatever the case might be, you don't go any further. You might argue for a minute or two, but you often don't go any further. And if they, often I leave mentor sessions thinking, gosh, I just wish that person had stopped talking and asked me why I had my point of view, or what did I see, or what did I expect if they did something different, because there was so much more I was willing to and ready to say that they sort of didn't give me permission to. And when you ask a question about somebody's perspective, when you ask to understand more, it's like giving them permission to share more, and often people want that. Mentors act somewhat Socratic, which means or the best mentors act Socratic. They try not to tell you what to do. They ask you questions. Have you thought about this? Have you tried that? And they're asking you that question for a reason. What you really want to know is the reason. So it's up to you to ask. So hopefully that helps, and I'm sorry for the long explanation. Let's see. Can we have a personal story of your successful pitches and how you did it? Well, yeah, sure. I just imagine everybody in the audience in their underwear. Isn't that what everybody does? No. I think the best thing that I've seen work well, and that both helps me deliver better, but also be more memorable for the audience, is to be very simple. I used to put a lot of information on my slides, and as you'll see from the slides that I use today, they were very simple, usually an image and 2 or 3 words. But the goal is really to have the audience remember nuggets. If they can, sort of remember key concepts, then again, all you're trying to do is to create that conversation. So, I can tell you that when I first started pitching, it was very difficult. It was very painful. I really dreaded doing it. And just the more I did it, really on any topic, it doesn't matter. The more comfortable it got, and the more fun it got ultimately. And so, if you look at the conversations you'll have when you're pitching, that 2.5 minutes, as an opportunity, not a problem, not as a challenge. If you kind of look at it as fun, then you're going to reflect that to the audience, your confidence and all that, because it's not just kind of what you say, and we often focus on sort of, do I have the right words, do I have the right slides, but it's also how you say it, your confidence, not overconfidence, but your confidence, your good cheer, your connection with the audience is all a part of it, because and part of, think about my comments earlier about making sure your team splits up and that everybody's prepared to interact with mentors and investors and anyone in the room is, that when you think about what an investor wants and they think about a team, gosh, if everybody has to be together and they walk around like, the 3 or 4 founders walk around together, then the investor or the mentor is going to be very concerned that that's how they run their business. Whereas if you have, an equal sized team, 3 or 4 people, and they're able to split up and work a room and connect with lots of people, then they're going to have a force multiplier, a much bigger market opportunity, because you've got, sort of very independent, very, sort of ready to succeed individuals that make up a very strong team. And so the sales are going to be better. The customer feedback is going to be better because they're getting so many more interactions, and that's really key. So long response. I apologize. Oh, great people connecting here on the chat. That's great. See if there are any more questions. Yeah, I think that looks like all the questions we have. We have phone numbers being shared. This is wonderful.
Yes.
This is like a
Good networking.
app here.
Yes. We are competing with Tinder.
Yeah, swipe right. Well, is there anything else?
Okay.
Anything we missed, Alex?
No, I think it was great, Bill. Thank you very much for all the information. Guys, thank you for joining us to this webinar too. You can always ask me your questions about Istanbul, about the event, about your presentations, anything. You have my email address, elif.startupturkey.com. And this is gonna be your show, Startup Turkey. So enjoy it, please, and get ready to it before coming here. Thank you all for being with us, and thank you again, Bill. We hope to see you all in Istanbul.
Thank you, everybody. It was great to meet you, and thank you for the kind comments online here too. It's really great, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.